I think a big problem with being a gamer slash tech enthusiast is that this lifestyle lends itself to disgusting amounts of consumerism. I see this every day, especially with people a bit younger than I am, that being a tech enthusiast means that sometimes you get the latest and greatest tech not because you need it, but just because it exists. And obviously that's not a healthy way to go about things. Over the last few years in particular, I've tried to prune my gaming setup down to have only the things that really impact me on a day-to-day level. If I don't need it, or if it doesn't bring me at least a minimal amount of joy, then I just don't have it, or I don't use it. Now my setup is dusty, it's not the prettiest, and it's definitely not the most expensive, but it is mine. Now let's start with the centerpiece of it all, my PC. So I've always had a weird history with PCs because of the fact that I make tech and gaming content. Basically, I would just get a bunch of parts and things for free, just from partnerships and things like that. So I've always kind of had at least something on the mid-upper tier in terms of specs. But that's not the case anymore. I've recently had to swap almost every part in this PC due to an unfortunate GPU slash power supply slash everything explosion accident. And that wasn't the most fun thing to go through, if I'm being honest. But in terms of current specs, the PC rocks an NVIDIA RTX 3080, a Ryzen 9 5900X, 64 gigabytes of DDR4 RAM, all sitting inside this case here. I'm not really sure where the case was from, I can't remember. Now what's crazy about having this PC with quote unquote backup parts is I'm kind of amazed how little I miss having a more powerful PC. Don't get me wrong, my old one had way better specs. It had a 4090 in it. I am saying though that sure, maybe some things are a bit slower and I do go from like the 200 FPS range to the high 100 FPS range in some games, but largely speaking, it hasn't really made that big of a difference in my day-to-day life. Maybe that'll make more sense once you see these things up next. So these are the monitors I currently run, and both are made by Acer. My main monitor over here is the Acer VG271S, a 165Hz monitor with an IPS panel. And my off monitor behind me is an Acer KA242Y, a 75Hz display with a VA panel. Now the thing is, both of these are just 1080p displays, so the 4090 I had before clearly overkill, and honestly my 3080 is approaching that point as well. I can't speak too much to the color accuracy on these things. I'm sure it's not perfect, maybe not even great, but what I can say for sure is I've made a ton of videos using these monitors that have gotten millions of views. So given that I'm not trying to be, Wes Anderson's colorist or anything, I think they're fine. And we in the tech enthusiast slash gamer community should be okay with fine. I just think that's a healthier thing to be okay with. So this largely takes care of the visual side of things, but what about the audio experience? Well, I'm glad you asked. Now the audio experience on my gaming setup is broadly divided into three parts. Let's start with my speakers over here. For speakers, I daily drive the Razer Nomos speakers. These aren't the Chroma version or the version with the subwoofer. These are just the plain Jane 1-2 punch matte version. They're pretty simply designed. They have super intuitive controls, a knob for bass and a knob for volume. I really can't complain too much. Frankly, with speakers, I think if you spend even a medium amount of money, it's pretty easy to satisfy like a daily driver casual listening experience. Now when I'm gaming, I swap over to these things, the Razer Kraken V3 Pro. Fair warning, you will see more Razer throughout the setup. It is what it is. It's a nostalgia thing for me. Now, I'm gonna keep it a buck. I don't like listening to music on these. I don't even really like listening to podcasts or things on these. The only reason I use headphones at all is because they make it easier to listen to things like footsteps when you're playing in game. So it really is strictly a gaming thing. Probably another 40% of the reason to use these though is because the secret chats that we have on the boys Discord VC need to stay on Discord. Boys, have you ever thought about just like immigration? I mean, I'm just saying, like what if... Seriously, it would be bad news bears if that leaked. But otherwise, yeah, don't really love using headphones at my desk. Maybe that's just a me thing though. Now because I also need to contribute to the Discord group chat, all of my voice comms go through this thing, the Rode Pod mic. It's just mounted on this random Amazon mic stand that I found and then fed through via XLR to an Elgato Wave XLR that I have back there. Now the pod mic is great, it's not super expensive, it sounds even better if you know how to use an EQ, and I love the Elgato Wave XLR. Once again, it's super intuitively designed, just one massive knob with some touch controls, and it even feeds enough gain to natively power something like a Shure SM7B, the white boy podcasting mic, without needing to buy something like a cloud lifter to help it along. Now you might have picked up that my Razer Krakens actually have a mic input because it's a gaming headset, meaning it has a mic with it. But the fact is, this has kind of always plugged in for content and things like that. It's better quality, it's not super difficult to use, so kind of just use this out of laziness. But next up, let's take you to where the magic happens, the things that drive my slightly, but distinctly above average gameplay. You know, other than the PC, I truly believe that the heart and soul of a gaming setup is in the keyboard. If you think about it, we spend a ton of time every day just typing, whether that be for work or to play games. It's a huge part of our day-to-day lives, whether we like it or not. So my keyboard right now is the Fuji 65. It's a 65 key layout with a black base and touches of Japanese inspiration all throughout. I mean, it's called the Fuji 65, like, you know, Mount Fuji, like in Japan. I don't really remember much about the switches that I used other than the fact that I got them on Facebook Marketplace and they're linear, so there's that. And to thematically complete the keyboard, I tossed on some Japanese keycaps that I also got from Facebook Marketplace. And you know what? Even if someone were to, let's say, poorly prepare a keyboard ASMR video, I think it would still sound pretty great. Not that I would do that. I mean, come on. Of course I was going to do that. Now, to pair with my keyboard, I currently use the Razer Viper V3 Hyperspeed. It's really light, it looks really cool, and the battery life on a single AA battery lasts forever. I will say I am a bit of a mouse hopper. If I'm not using the Razer Viper, I might swap to something like my Razer Basilisk, or if I'm playing something like World of Warcraft, I might use my Razer Naga, which is somewhere in the room. I just couldn't find it. Now, to tie everything together, I have my mousepad. Fun fact about this mousepad, though, is that I might be the only person in Asia with this mousepad in particular. Now, that's because this mousepad was made by a creator buddy of mine, Arki Technology. He made it for his mousepad company, Arki Designs, and he actually sent this to me back when they first released. Now, I would tell you to go get one, but the problem is they're sold out, and I don't think he makes them anymore, so sorry about that. I've been using this for years now, as you can probably tell. I'm a huge fan of the black base with the koi fish accenting. I think it does really nicely to pair with the wood tones throughout the rest of my setup. It's not super vivid with anime characters or anything like that. It's not too over the top, and I love it. Now, last but certainly not least for my gaming setup, we've got one more thing. Now, while you probably spend a lot of time typing on your setup, you probably spend even more time sitting. And to help me with that, I have this Razer Isker gaming chair. Now, I left this for last, not just because, I mean, it's a chair, there's not really much to say, but it's also probably my least favorite part of my gaming setup. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's fine, it's comfortable enough, and I can adjust it to be set up however I really need it to be. It's just that if I were to swap one thing out of my gaming setup today, I'd probably swap out this chair for something like a Herman Miller Aeron, like the ones I used to have at my old office job. God, I miss those chairs. Chairs can be very expensive, but given how much time we spend sitting every day, I don't think there are that many better investments when it comes to your gaming setup, just for overall health. So that right there is my minimalist and I would say pretty affordable gaming setup. Now, I didn't cover everything. I didn't cover the webcam that I barely use or my PS5 that I haven't touched since I finished the Demon's Souls remake. But there's already so much maximalist setup content out there that I thought I would just focus on the things that really move the needle for me, things that really make an impact. And if you're watching this, I want you to remember that you don't need a ton of super fancy stuff in order for it to be a valid setup. If you can play games, if you can do what you need to do without, hurting yourself, I guess, then it works. And that's great. Subscribe if you want to stick around. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.